friends, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are all doing really well. So here we are, we're going into summer and I thought I would put together a book list of reading recommendations for you guys. So I'm over chilling on the couch with Bones today. So the library is here and wraps around and my fireplace is over there, but I thought I would change up the filming location today, hang out with Bones and chat some summer reads, which are not actually summer reads, so I'll explain. I'm gonna lay Bones down here for a second, but we're having fun chilling out over here on the couch, and I've got Jessie, my haunted doll, over there as well. There we go. I backed up the camera a little bit as well. So I wanted to give you guys today a summer reading list for people specifically who hate summer. Now, I know most booktubers, horror tubers are giving you their summer slashers and beach reads and all of that sort of thing. So I wanted to kind of go outside of that a little bit and stick more to the gothic and spooky. So when you're done with the sun and you're all sunburnt and you've come indoors, you want to close the curtains, light a Halloween scented candle, and just read something that's eerie and spooky. For the majority of this list, it'll be those types of books. There are a couple on here that kind of fall within some other realms, but for the most part, this is a list for people who absolutely hate summer. They want to be indoors in their air conditioning, like I said, with the curtains closed, candles lit, or on those days when you get those wonderful thunderstorms at night when it's hot during the day and you just want to read something spooky. So I've compiled, I think, 10 on this list, and these are mostly within the gothic sort of sphere. So how I ended up picking these was it was just some that, you know, as soon as I thought about what I wanted to read that sort of anti-summer, but had nothing to do with like Halloween or anything like that, but also it might have to do with travel. It might take place in the summer. It's girls going to visit family, you know, people going on trips, that sort of thing. So this is a bit of a varied list, but the one thing in common is that it's all dark and spooky and gothic, and it's going to be for those people that just, they're done with their beach reads, they're done with their summer slashers, and they want to get into the dark and spooky. So we're going to jump right into the list. Like I said, I've got about 10, and they do range from adult all the way down to children's books. And of course, in true Lizzie fashion, I've already had to stop and clear some space off of my SIM card, which happens so much. One of these days I'll actually wipe it completely clean and start fresh. But we're getting right into the list. So the first one, there's witchy reads, there's ghosty reads, there's doll houses, there's all kinds of things on this list. But the first one that I wanted to talk to you about is The Witch of Willow Hall by Hester Fox. And you guys know that I have such a love for Hester Fox's writing. She's a fantastic gothic writer, and she is an auto-buy author for me. She does have a new one out, but it's kind of middle grade and it's a retelling, so I haven't purchased that one yet. But when it comes to her adult gothic, she's fantastic. And this is actually the first book that I read from her, and I really enjoyed it. So just from the back. New Oldbury in 1821. In the wake of a scandal, the Montrose family and their 3 daughters, Catherine, Lydia, and Emmeline, flee Boston for their new country home, which is actually the family's summer home, Willow Hall. The estate seems sleepy and idyllic, but a subtle menace creeps into the atmosphere. Remnants of dark history that called to Lydia and to the youngest Emmeline. All 3 daughters will be irrevocably changed by what follows, but none more than Lydia, who must draw on a power she never knew she possessed if she wants to protect those she loves. For Willow Hall's secrets rise in the end. So I picked this one mainly because, like it says, this family has to flee to their country estate, which is the one that they go to during the summer. It's kind of like when you see on period dramas when they go to London for the summer season, and it's fantastic. It'll rip your heart apart. It's really sad. The sisters have this bickery going on. There's old family secrets. It's really good. And I remember I would go on the treadmill in the morning down here when I had a treadmill and listen to this for an hour or so. And it's absolutely fantastic. So I thought I'd throw this one in here for sure. And then next up, I have 2 actually by the same author, and both of them take place in my home province of Newfoundland, and they have a lot of folklore and stuff like that wrapped into them. And that's 2 books by Karis Cotter. The first one is The Ghost Road, and it has a lot to do with fairies. So these 2 girls who are cousins end up going to Newfoundland for the summer. I believe the main character is from Toronto, and she has no idea, like she's a big city girl, she has no idea what living in a small province, in a small community in a small province would be like, but also it's cold, and she, even in the summertime, she has to sleep with knit sweaters and quilts and everything, and it has a lot to do with fairy sort of folklore. So these two girls are on the hunt for, first of all, fairies in Newfoundland, but also they start to unravel this family secret, and they start to piece together this mystery throughout the summer, and they grow together as friends, of course, and it's really cozy. Like I believe they're with their grandmother, and she's always cooking and baking, so it has that sort of cozy food sort of thing going on in this small province in Eastern Canada, and it's absolutely fantastic. This was a 4-star read for me. It is a middle grade book, but it has a lot of heart, and I love that this time of year. And then the second one, also by Karis Cotter, is a dollhouse mystery, and I have a couple of dollhouse mysteries on as well. I'm just going to grab Jessie, actually. She's going to help me give you guys the synopsis of these couple of doll-related books. So if you guys have been around my channel for a little while already, you know Jessie, my haunted doll. My parents brought her up 2 summers ago from Newfoundland. I've had her since I've been about 8, probably 7 or 8, and I love her. She's fantastic. She has an attachment from my old house, the haunted Victorian that I grew up in, and she hangs out here with Bones and myself down in the library. So she's going to help me give you guys the synopsis of this one. A creepy, mysterious dollhouse takes center stage in this atmospheric middle-grade mystery for fans of doll bones and small spaces. Alice's world is falling apart. Her parents are getting a divorce, and they've canceled their yearly cottage trip, the one that gets Alice through the school year. Instead, Alice and her mom are headed to some small town where Alice's mom will be a live-in nurse to a rich elderly lady. The house is huge, imposing, and spooky, and everything inside is meticulously kept and perfect. Not a fun place to spend the summer. Things start to get weird when Alice finds a dollhouse in the attic that is an exact replica of the house she's living in. Then she wakes up to find a girl asleep next to her in her bed, a girl who looks a lot like one of the dolls from the dollhouse. When the dollhouse starts to change when Alice isn't looking, she knows she has to solve the mystery. Who are the girls in the dollhouse? What happened to them? And what is their connection to the mean and mysterious woman who owns the house? So this one is fantastic. It's right up my alley, and like I said, this is perfect to put on during a summer night about a little girl who is spending the summer where she doesn't want to be, but she ends up unraveling a mystery of a dollhouse that looks exactly like the house that she's staying in. So definitely put this one on your list if you have baby bats at home and you want them to be reading, or if you're a child at heart. And next up on the list is another dollhouse themed book. This is The Dollhouse Murders by Betty Wren Wright, one that I read a couple of years ago, I believe during the summer, a few years ago, and it was fantastic. And this is a really, really sad, spooky, creepy book. And so definitely if you're looking for a good summer themed ghost story, definitely give this one a go. So we have a young girl that's going to spend some time with a relative that she doesn't really know a whole lot, and she ends up finding mystery too. So just from the back, 12-year-old Amy is having difficulties at home being responsible for her brain-damaged sister Luann. While visiting her Aunt Claire at the old family home, she discovers an eerily haunted dollhouse in the attic, an exact replica of the family home. That sounds familiar. Whenever she sees it, the dolls representing her relatives have moved. Her aunt won't listen to Amy's claims that the dolls are trying to tell her something. This leads Amy to research old news reports where she discovers a family secret, the murder of her grandparents. The two sisters unravel the mystery. Amy grows to accept her sister and to understand that Luann is more capable than she first thought. So a couple of dollhouse, doll-themed books for your summertime reads. Definitely spooky. I love both of them. And Betty Wren Wright's book, I believe, is from the 80s. So I'm wondering, did Karis Cotter kind of take a little bit of inspiration for her own story with a replica of a dollhouse in the other dollhouse book that I recommended? Okay, so I did put Jessie back in her spot because we're done talking about doll books for now. But the next one that I wanted to recommend is The Book of Witching by C.J. Cook. And I just finished this one a little while ago, and it's one of those books that is so good. I think I've got to probably put it in the first place of books that I've read this year. And it's not a new book. I believe it came out a little while ago. But C.J. Cook is a new author to me. I believe I read 2 by her last year. And then this is my 3rd. And she is just by far one of my favorite authors of all time. But this book completely blew me away. So in this one, so it actually takes place kind of just after Beltane, which is in May. Of course, the beginning of May is Beltane season, but still has that sort of summer vibe going on. So it's about these 3 teenage kids who end up going to a secluded island in the UK, and a tragedy happens, and one of the girls, the 2 other kids actually died, and the only survivor is now in the hospital in a coma. So this follows her mother and father trying to unravel this mystery that happened at Beltane. And when their daughter wakes up, she claims to be Nyx, the goddess Nyx. And so they've got to try to unravel this mystery. Is she possessed? What's going on? There's a lot of occult elements. There's a lot of folklore. And there is a dual timeline that is atrociously sad, where it follows a witch from, I believe, the 18th century. I think it's in the 18th century, from this same sort of island. And obviously there's a mysterious book called The Book of Witching, and it goes back and forth with these timelines and how the stories are kind of interconnected. And this is by far probably one of the most difficult books that I've ever read, and it's one of those books that I had to put it down and completely take a break after reading it. And you know, it's a fantastic book. I don't know if I'll ever read it again. It's a little bit difficult because it does have to do with witch trials and you know, the torture of women and stuff like that back during that time period. But it did have the little bit of relief going from both of the time periods. So I wanted to put this one on there, like I said, because it does take place during Beltane, which we're past now, but of course Beltane is the opening of summer. So if you haven't read this book yet, it is fantastic, and I think probably out of all of the C.J. Cook books that I've read so far, this one by far is my favorite. So you'll probably notice that a lot of these books are not only gothic, but they also have a lot of folklore wrapped into them as well. And that is an element that I love in my gothic reads. I love having the occult wrapped in, and I love having folklore wrapped in of a specific area. So Alex Bell, who is the author of the Frozen Charlotte series, which is another one that I actually would recommend reading during this time of year, definitely has the dark and spooky and the fog, seaside mansion sort of thing on the Isle of Skye. One of her other books that she wrote called The Lighthouse is one that absolutely blew me away as well. The Frozen Charlotte duology is one that is my favorite books of all time. I'm sure most of you probably know that by now, but I wanted to give some love to this book as well because it is fantastic and again has a lot of that folklore element wrapped in. On Bird Rock, gannets circle and the thick mist surrounds the lighthouse at its center, hiding the secrets of a tragic past within. From the second they set foot on the island to join their dad and his new family, Jess and Rosie feel that something is wrong. Nightmares haunt their dreams, and there seems to be someone or something else in the lighthouse, their home for the summer. Counting down the days until they can leave, Jess and Rosie decide to investigate. But when Rosie disappears, the countdown takes on a new meaning, especially when no one but Jess remembers Rosie at all. So this is fantastic, and like I said, it does take place during the summer, but it's in the UK, and they're on this like secluded island in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean. So you have, like I said, the fog and the sea spray and this mystery and lots of folklore and everything wrapped in. So I would definitely recommend this one. Alex Bell is another favorite author of mine, solely because of the Frozen Charlotte series, but this book is also very, very good. And because I love reading short story collections during this time of year, and I love folklore and local legends and campfire type stories during this time of year. I used to love telling spooky stories around a campfire when you're, you know, in the middle of nowhere and you get those spooky feels. I grew up going to girls' camps and we used to do that a lot. I wanted to put a story collection on here, and one of my favorites is the Scariest Stories Ever Told series. I only have one of them in my collection, and it was one of my favorites when I was a kid, and I read that thing Until It Fell Apart. And it does have a lot of familiar sort of stories, but probably told in a little bit of a different way than you're used to. And of course, it has a couple maybe that you're not used to as well. So I definitely wanted to go with this series. They are rare to find. You would probably have to find them either at a thrift store or your library, eBay, Etsy, that sort of thing. And volume 2 is the one that I grew up with, and this cover actually scared the crap out of me as a kid, but I absolutely loved it, and I loved every single one of the stories. I read it until it literally fell apart. So this is where we're kind of deviating a little bit from the list. So we're going to deviate a little bit and then we're going to deviate back. So I wanted to put Maggie's Grave on this list because it has sort of that summer vibe with young, silly, stupid kids going somewhere where they're not supposed to be. So this book is one of my favorite horror books of all time. If you haven't gotten to this one, most people in the horror community obviously have, but if you haven't gotten to this book yet, you've been sleeping on it, it will blow your mind. I think I finished this one in 2 days a couple of years ago, and it's still a book that I think about fairly frequently, and I always say that this is a book that I love if they would make a movie out of it, but it would be a movie I would never be able to watch, because even with my books, I typically don't have this much body horror in my reads. But essentially, it's about these kids who end up going to a location and they disturb the grave of a witch from years and years and years previous, and it actually does open with what happened with that witch in her time. And you know, again, this has folklore with, there's actually a place in the UK that has Maggie's Grave there. I believe it's in Scotland. And like I said, if you slept on this one, it is fantastic. It's fast paced, it's gross and gruesome, and you're just rooting the whole way. And I love that it does have sort of that summer slasher sort of feel in it. So I definitely wanted to put this one on here because even though I hate summer and I hate anything to do with summer, I don't really do the summer ween thing, and you know, I just try to avoid it at all costs. This would definitely fit in with your summer slashers if you wanted to go that route, but it also has the folklore and witchy and dark and spooky atmosphere as well. So the last 2 books on this list are very, very similar in the types of stories that they are, and they fall right in between that gothic, dark and spooky, ghost story sort of feel, you know, the cozy ghosty books, and the summer slashers. It's very like half and half. So I would definitely put this in the middle of where we were at the beginning of this list and then where we ended up at Maggie's Grave. So the first one that I wanted to talk about, of course, I wasn't going to do a gothic and spooky kind of ghosty list without putting some Darcy Coates on there. So I wanted to talk about The Carrow Hunt, which is not one of my favorite books by her by any means. There's definitely better ones, but it's not a bad book, and it is definitely fantastic for this time of year. So I'm just going to read quickly from the back. The dead are restless here. Remy is a tour guide for Carrow House, a notoriously haunted building. When she's asked to host 7 guests for a week-long stay to research Carrow's phenomena, she hopes to finally experience some of the sightings that made the house famous. At first, it's everything they hoped for. Then a storm moves in, cutting off their contact with the outside world. And then things quickly become twisted. Doors open on their own, seances go disastrously wrong, red liquid seeps from behind the wallpaper, their spirit medium wanders through the house at night, seemingly in a trance. Then one of the guests dies under mysterious circumstances, and Remy is forced to consider the possibility that the ghost of the house's original owner, a twisted serial killer, still walks the halls. But by then, it's too late to escape. So definitely has that sort of summer storm sort of feeling, like I was talking about at the beginning of the video, when it's super hot during the day and then everything closes in and you start to get this huge downpour with the road washing out and they're all stuck in this like creepy haunted house that was owned by a serial killer. It's definitely what I would be going for during this time of year. This book is fantastic. Like I said, there's better Darcy Coates that I've read, but this one is definitely suited to this time of year, and it's not a bad book at all. And the last book on this list is Magnolia Lane by Donald R. Guillory, a book which I read a few years ago. It's Southern Gothic, so you have that hot, sticky summer sort of situation going on, but also reflective of the same sort of situation in the Darcy Coates book, where you have a group of people who end up in a storm. They're completely cut off by the outside. And in this one, it's actually more fast-paced, bloody. It has a high body count, so more towards sort of that Maggie's grave sort of feel, but definitely has some not really folklore, but history wrapped around in there. Like I said, it's Southern Gothic. It has all of those dark and spooky vibes, and a little bit of summer slasher in there as well. So this is about a woman who owned a plantation back in the Old South during that time period of slavery and all of that sort of thing, and she defied sort of social norms, and she ended up coming to her demise in a very violent and bloody end. And her family owned her home, her plantation, the Magnolia, throughout the years, throughout the centuries, and they vowed that no one would live in the house to just sort of commemorate her death and to honor her death. They didn't want anybody to be living in the house. Then eventually the family decides to open the house for tours, but the one caveat was that tours were not allowed to stay overnight. But one tour unfortunately had no choice. Their driver missing, blinding rains, flash floods, and violent winds would force them to take refuge in the home. They are quickly brought face to face with the horrors and violence of the Magnolia. So, like I said, this one has that sort of Southern Gothic feel, very dark, very spooky, a lot of history wrapped around into it, and then starts the bloody stabby. So it's absolutely fantastic. Like I said, it's kind of in the middle of, you know, sort of where we were at the beginning of the list with haunted doll houses and ghost stories and all of that, and where we ended up at Maggie's grave with a little violence and bloodshed. So that is my list, and like I said, this is a list for people who hate summer. They don't want any beach reads, they don't want, you know, any sort of camp out sort of things or anything that are typically on these sorts of lists. This is very an anti-summer list where you just want to close all the curtains when you're sunburned and you're done with all of it, and light your candles and have a good old spooky evening. So let me know down below, of course, if you have read any of these books, or if you're going to plan on putting some of these on your own summer lists to kind of break away from those beach reads and popcorn reads and summer slashers and all of that sort of thing. I'm hoping I gave a few suggestions of things that haven't been on other people's lists if you want to go more into that dark and spooky. Of course, my very good friend Edie Lewis is running Summer Spooks right now. I'll have all of his information linked down below for that readathon if you wanted to take part in that. But there we go, the book list for people who hate summer. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give me a thumbs up, leave me a question or a comment down below, because you know I love chatting with you guys. But until next time, stay spooky, everybody. Bye.